accurately portrays them from the female point of view. I tend to agree, Caroline said. That narrows the field of possibilities to half the population of London. Delilah's bright blue eyes twinkled. Speculation has been rampant since the very first column, but I do have a theory. Caroline sat down again, listening intently. Please, go on. It must be someone who has access to grand balls, esteemed drawing-rooms, and aristocratic parties. But I suspect she exists somewhere on the fringes. Not spurned exactly, but certainly not embraced to the bosom of London's elite. Yes, that does stand to reason. Caroline thought about the columns she'd studied the day before and smiled. Anyone who encourages young women to nick brandy from their fathers and brothers does not adhere closely to society's strictures. Delilah's face split into a mischievous grin. She also recommends sultry gazes, forbidden books, and daydreaming. It's no wonder she's gone to great lengths to conceal her identity. I certainly have no wish to expose her, but I can't escape the feeling that she somehow is key to discovering who I am. Caroline marched to the window, swept aside the plush curtains, and looked out over the square. Gentlemen walked along, swinging their canes. Nannies chatted as they pushed their prams down the pavement. Ladies on their way to the milliner's shop twirled pretty parasols. Beyond the walls of the Duke's townhouse, life progressed at its usual brisk pace. Everyone seemed to be sailing somewhere exciting and new, while she was marooned on the shore, no boat in sight. As Nash and Caroline rumbled through the dark streets of London in a hackney cab, he enumerated in his head all the ways their plans could go awry. Delilah could awake and discover he and Caroline were gone. One of the Grey Goose's patrons could see through his or Caroline's disguise. They could end up in another tavern brawl. But, if he was honest with himself, the real source of his worry was how Caroline would respond to returning to the scene of her injury. She desperately wanted her memory back, and he wanted that for her too, but he couldn't help wondering what that might mean for him, and for their unconventional courtship, if it could even be called that. There hadn't been any formal introductions or ballroom dances or walks in the park. He didn't know her surname, and neither did she. But after spending less than a week with her, he was already having difficulty imagining a future without her. A dangerous development, that. He glanced over at her, gazing out the window on the seat beside him. Remembered it was her first time out of the house since she'd hit her head. "Does anything look familiar?" he asked. She continued staring at the passing houses, shops, squares and streets, as though they might disappear if she took her eyes off them. Not in the sense that I can recall being in specific places, but... But? I do sense that I belong here. Does that make any sense at all? It does. He longed to tell her that perhaps her instincts were telling her she belonged with him, but instead he reached between them and held her hand, wishing they weren't both wearing rough leather gloves. "Remember," he said, "anything that compromises your disguise puts you at risk, so try not to talk. Stay close, and for the love of God, no smiling." Predictably defiant, she beamed at him. "From the moment we step out of the cab, I promise to stay by your side, silent and sullen." "You'll need to if we're going to have the slightest chance of fooling anyone." He scowled at her long lashes and elfish chin. "Let's hope the tap room is dimly lit and the clientele are pleasantly drunk." As the cab rolled to a stop, she took a deep breath, gave his hand a little squeeze, and released it. "Here we go," she said, all her hopes and fears for the evening plain on her lovely face. "Everything will be fine," he said. "Trust me." It took every ounce of restraint he possessed not to grasp her waist as she hopped out of the cab or place his hand at the small of her back. For the next half hour they were blacksmith and apprentice. He pulled his cap low over his brow and strode to the door of the tap room. "Let's go." Caroline followed at Nash's heels, taking in the exterior of the Grey Goose. Large mullioned windows, cloudy with smoke,